Hi, this is Laura. So this is my learning teaching interaction number 2, and I am going to time it so that I don't run over like I did before. Much better I don't talk so long. So anyways, this is what I learned from some of what we've read over the last several weeks. The first chapter, in chapter 4, one of the things that really was interesting about that is that what occurred to me is that it is all about the meat of what we're teaching and what we're doing. And so the meat has to be there. We have to have that core, solid center so that everything else that we do is added to that. And that was an interesting thing that came to me as I read that chapter. I thought that was really interesting because that was the first thing that really hit me, was that all of the things that we're going to talk about later and all of the things, the rest of the chapters were less about what the core was, but the core was first. And so that's what we needed to start with. And this is what we have to fall back on. We have to have that center that says why it is we're there and what the purpose is, and it has to be real. The second chapter that we read, chapter 5, was about engaging the audience, and I really loved the 3 parts to the formula, which was relevance, respect, and participation. So I really thought that, okay, relevance, that goes back to the whole meat thing. Respect, we have to respect our audience, our participants, who actually take their time, their precious time, to come and go to the workshop. And so whenever we get stuck, or whenever something might be said that's inappropriate or whatever, we have to be respectful, and we have to teach in that way. We have to be respectful. And the last one was participation, which is so interesting because so many people who teach in Relief Society sit up there or stand up there and read the whole lesson without any kind of participation. In fact, sometimes the whole lesson is about the person who's standing up there and not what is being taught, which is really an interesting thing that I have come to realize as I've gone through some of my classes. So the engaging the audience part was really interesting. I liked the idea of using conflict theory and then consistency in how we change people. But actually, we don't change people, but that was really what changes people. Is those were really interesting to me. Then we went into the gospel, teaching the gospel book, and so this was really interesting too, because I've never taught seminary. I have taught in Relief Society and primary and young women, but as I read this book, I thought more of seminary teachers, and in fact, I think that that's who it's geared for. But the first part that we read was about gospel learning. And what occurred to me as I read that was that the participants need to be as invested. I put this on my notes. The participants should be as invested in the workshop, though they may not know it at the time. So they have to have a real need. They have to have come prepared to listen to whatever it is that we're going to teach about. And so it is with the gospel as well, but that part of it really was like, oh yeah, they really need to know that what we're going to do is something that really is going to be something they need or want, and so they need to be invested. The second part of that first reading that we was the role of the teacher. And what I got from that, and I wrote them all down and took all notes and stuff, but the most important part for me was that how important it was that we be as prepared as possible. So in teaching the gospel, it's talking about preparing yourself and deciding what and how to teach, and establishing and maintaining an appropriate setting. So I really thought that part of it, that's why I think that my first thought was this was all about seminary, because maintaining a an appropriate setting or establishing an appropriate setting is really important, I think, when you're teaching seminary, when it can get out of hand, or at least that's what I hear. So that's really important, but it probably is not as important in our workshop, but it was a good refresher, a reminder about how important it is that we be prepared, and that we be prepared for all different kinds of things that may happen or come up. So the next chapter was teaching skills and tools in family life education, and it was all the different methods: group discussions, family councils, role-playing, movie and TV clips, educational videos, pictures, and on. So I really enjoyed that chapter, and I took a whole bunch of notes about that one as well, but the part that I really liked was that we are not set, it is not set in stone how we have to teach our workshop. We can and should be focused on having a lot of variety. And I like that because as a teacher, so I teach in Relief Society, and I'm a little bit more limited time-wise and appropriateness-wise, I guess, because I probably wouldn't bring in movie clips or whatever for Relief Society. But I like the idea that we use all different kinds of things to make being there more interesting and to make teaching it more interesting. And so that was fun. And all the different methods and the idea about all of that was interesting and fun to think about how I could incorporate some different things than what I had actually have already kind of been thinking and had planned. So that was good. Working with diverse audiences. That was interesting. It talked about the different things about ethnicity and taking into account who your audience is, and not only just knowing who your audience is, but knowing who you are and knowing what your limits are. And that was really important because you have to know that that there might be things that would be a part of your workshop that you might not be comfortable, or that you're going to have to figure out and be comfortable with. So that reminded me. And plus, I'm going to hopefully get everybody to come from my stake. I have permission to advertise to the stake, so that I may have people there who speak less English, and so that's made me think. So anyways, the rest of the ones were about using true stories. I thought of that general authority who I could not think of his name, who didn't tell true stories. That was kind of interesting. And having discussions and questions, and how important it was to use someone's name. I thought that was really a good reminder. And using other teaching resources and mixing it up and making it more interesting and fun. So this is what I've learned this time, and this is a whole lot shorter, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.